Standards 26 through 29 are all about different properties of exponents. The very first page, page 3, it's just some basic rules, some basic vocabulary about exponents. The number in the front, which we'll use a lot to talk about, is the coefficient. The variable that has an exponent is called the base. And then the little number at the top, that's going to be our exponent. Okay, so multiplication in general, if I was going to take 3 times 4, that means really I'm just taking 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. Okay, so multiplication is really just repeated addition. Now that's the same kind of idea for exponents, but exponents is just repeated multiplication. So if I wanted to do 3 to the 4th power, that would be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. So it's just repeated multiplication. So let's talk about exponents in general, and then work our way so we can talk about zero and negative exponents. In general, 3 to the 1st power is just 3. 3 to the 2nd power is 3 times 3. There's 2 of them. So that is 9. 3 to the 3rd power, there are 3 of them, which is 27. So as we move to the right, we are multiplying by 3. Which means if I want to go backwards, the opposite of multiplying, if I wanted to go this way, I would have to divide. So 27 divided by 3 is 9. 9 divided by 3 is 3. What is 3 divided by 3? That would be 1. What that tells us is that 3 to the 0 power is 1. So right below here, we're going to talk about any non-zero number or variable with an exponent of 0 is equivalent to 1. The answer is 1. So 25 to the 0 power, 1. X to the 0 power, 1. Y to the 0 power, 1. This is where it gets a little bit tricky because these two things are separate when it comes to their exponent. So I have the number 3 times x to the 0, which is 1. So that's just going to give us 3. So that's our first rule. Our first rule has 0 exponent is equivalent to 1. Our second rule deals with negative exponents. Okay? So on my chart here, my chart from before, I knew that this was 27, 9, and 3. We already talked about if you divide by 3, it gets you backwards to the next lowest exponent. Divide by 3. 3 divided by 3, we said that's 1. So 3 to the 0 power, that's 1. My exponent is 0. So what about negative 1? What is 3 to the negative 1? If I take this number and divide by 3, it would be the fraction 1 over 3. So what's happening is a negative exponent is going to send that 3 down to the bottom of my fraction. It's going to change into a fraction with a 1 on the top and a 3 on the bottom. And that's kind of what you see here. Any number to a negative exponent will flip and go down to the bottom of a fraction with a 1 on the top. So it says here, for any non-zero number a raised to a negative exponent, place the power in the denominator and rewrite it with a positive exponent. If it's already in the denominator, we will put it in the numerator so that I can have a positive exponent. Okay, let's just fill this in, this last little part. What about negative 2? 3 to the negative 2 would make that 1 over 3 squared, which we know 3 squared to be 9, so that would just be 1 over 9. So just kind of an idea of what that's going to look like. Okay, so down here at the bottom we have some examples of negative exponents. So if a negative exponent is in the top, we're going to move it to the bottom. If a negative exponent is in the bottom, we're going to move it to the top. So because this negative exponent is in the bottom, we'll move it up to the top so I can write it with a positive exponent. That would make a 1 on the bottom. Now you don't have to write the 1, but you certainly can. If it's already on the top, I'm going to move it to the bottom to make it positive. Here again, these two are separate. The exponent only goes with the b. So the number 2 is going to stay up at the top because it does not have a negative exponent. b to the 5th will go to the bottom. d to the negative 2 in the bottom will come up to join the number 3. They're not going to flip-flop. Just the d to the 2nd is going to come up to join the 3 on the top, which leaves nothing but the number 1 on the bottom. That doesn't need to be written, but if that shows you that there's everything out of the bottom has kind of come up to the top, you can write the 1 if that's helpful. We're going to go ahead and turn the page to page 4. Those are the first 2 rules. And as we learn the last 2 rules, we'll use the negative and 0 exponents within those rules. Here's a practice where the 0 and the negative exponents kind of show up together. Your first question on the assessment will have both 0 and negative exponents in the first question. So anything to the 0 power, that's going to be 1. So really what I'm doing is taking 5 times 1, which is just 5. And then this y to the negative 2, we're going to move that to the bottom of this fraction. So this 5 times 1 is really just 5. So I don't really need that 1. So final answer, a 5 on the top and a y squared on the bottom. Okay? Over here on number 2, this is a little bit different because I have a negative coefficient, which does not mean that it will go to the bottom. Okay? It's going to stay up at the top because its exponent is a positive 1. This negative exponent here is going to go to the bottom because the exponent is negative. And then we would take that times a 1, which if you take something times a 1, it doesn't really change it. So that's it. Okay, over here, the 4 and the x are 2 separate things. So the 4 is going to stay right where it is on the top. The x to the 5th is actually going to go down to the bottom. But the z is going to come up to the top. And what should I do with the y to the 0 power? Y to the 0 power is 1, so I multiply that 1 times the 4, which just is 4. So I really am not doing anything with it, so I can just cross it out. So over here, maybe this b to the 0, we just cross it out. It's 1 times the negative 3 at the front. That negative 3 is going to stay up on the top because its exponent is still a positive 1. But my a to the negative 4 will come down to the bottom. Okay, so that's some practice with both positive and negative exponents together.